Larry, let's get started with what's going on right now between Palestinians and Israelis. What do we know from these negotiations that are going on right now?
Well, the initial reporting is that they may have the tentative outlines of a deal. I remain skeptical. Uh, Sinwar, the new head of the negotiating team for Hamas, has been pretty insistent. My understanding was he wasn't even at these talks. So, everybody else is coming up with an agreement for Hamas without Hamas actually having been there to sign off on the agreement. Uh, and it may be an attempt to try to see if they can bully Hamas into accepting an agreement. But they say, well, they're going to study it and they'll be back next week, which means the killing of Palestinian women, children, and elderly men is going to continue. The slaughter that the Israelis are engaged in is just inhumane. It is despicable, disgusting. They are desecrating everything that they claim that the state of Israel supposedly stood for.
But they're negotiating with Mahmoud Abbas right now. Who are these
No,
people?
no, no. Mahmoud Abbas, he went to Russia. I don't know why. He's been in the pocket of the West for so long. One of the interesting lies that keeps being told about this whole peace process going back 50 years, or 40 years at least, is that the Palestinians have rejected every good deal. The Palestinians they're incapable of accepting a good deal. Well, that's a lie, because what happened from once Hamas emerged, I guess was in 1979, Israel began within a year through Mossad to fund it. Why? Well, Israel did not want to reach a peace deal with Fatah and the PLO, and so they were funding Hamas so that uh, they would be if you will, a way to create a wedge to separate the Palestinians. And by funding Hamas and some of its activities, they created an excuse for Israel never to reach an agreement. And yet Israel could always blame it on the Palestinians. Like, oh, look at these Palestinians. They're always fighting amongst each other. Yeah, that's because we're arming and equipping one side to do the fight. And surprise. So what has changed in the course of the last 4 weeks, I guess July 27th, 28th, in Beijing, the Chinese brought all these different Palestinian factions together. There are 14 of them. And said, all right, boys, stop fighting with each other. Get along. We're all about wanting to have peace for the Palestinian people, right? Right? And so Islamic Jihad, Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, PFLP, the Hamas, they got so many different names. And they all signed off on a document. Then 2 days later, Hania is murdered in Tehran. And this was sort of a poke in the eye to the Chinese, like, keep your, mind your own damn business, stay out of our Israeli business. And if anything, it infuriated the Chinese to the point that they are now solidly backing a Palestinian process. In the past, they may have paid lip service to it, but not now. I think now you're going to see they're going to be actually involved in helping work aggressively behind the scenes on the diplomatic front to bring something about. So this process now, it all hinges on Israel. And, I don't see the Israelis making the deal, because the Zionists around Netanyahu, the people like Smotrich and Ben Gvir, these are insane fanatics. There's no other way to describe them. They're not rational people. They're not people that you could sit down and say, "Hey, can we just talk this out?" No, they are diehards.
We know that Anthony Blinken right now is in Israel. And in your opinion, what the Biden administration can do in order to push them into negotiation, to make some sort of modification toward this type of rhetoric that they're having right now?
Well, in the world of possibility, what could they do? If Blinken showed up and said, "Bibi, here's the deal. Either you take this deal, you end this war with the Palestinians, or we're not sending you another weapon, we're not sending you another dollar, and all of these military units that we've flooded here, they're going home, and you're on your own. Do that or else." And we're not going to do that. We should, but we're not going to. So instead, Blinken's like an abused spouse. So you're going to go back in and take another beating from his husband, Bibi Netanyahu, cuff him around a little bit. Maybe they'll have makeup. Maybe they'll have makeup sex. Who knows?
Larry, what's happening to Bill Burns? Because it seems that this guy that we've known him for being so rational right now when it comes to Ukraine and in Gaza right now, it doesn't seem that he has any sort of wisdom when it comes to these two conflicts, and or he cannot do anything. Maybe in the Biden administration, he's not in a good position to do anything substantially.
Well, I disagree with you that he's been rational in Ukraine. Just the opposite. So what he said in public, and that's why I go off on what he says in public, has been, in the category of batshit crazy. Okay. You were correct that within the Biden administration, that Burns stands the tallest, not just in terms of physical stature, but in terms of intellect and experience on how to handle the negotiations on this. And I think he has played a critical role talking to the Russians, or at least to the Russian intelligence chief, and helping secure like the prisoner exchange that took place recently. And he's trying to play a role on the negotiation front as well to end the war in Gaza and the West Bank. But no real effective change of U.S. policy. That's the problem. The problem is U.S. policy. And we are completely enabling the Israelis, the Zionists, who are committed to destroying the Palestinian people. This isn't about saying, we got to stop these fighters and let's shut them down. This is about the extermination of the Palestinians as a people, as a nation.
Do we have any sign that the Biden administration is using this opportunity, these new differences that are happening, these new cracks that are happening within the Netanyahu administration, to use it as an opportunity to put some pressure on them?
I've seen no evidence of that. And what we have seen, though, is I know that 2 weeks ago, and I think I mentioned this to you before, that I have a friend who is in touch with senior members of the Israeli defense establishment, and I mean at the top, not some junior secretary. And as of 2 weeks ago, the Israelis were seriously talking about doing an imminent, preemptive strike on Iran. So they were not just sitting, it wasn't, idle chatter. I mean, they were seriously talking about doing it. And they didn't do it. So far, haven't done it. So you got to ask why. One, I think one of the reasons is they're watching the steps that Iran has taken to bolster its defenses and work with Russia and get new air defense systems in place, new electronic warfare systems. and recognizing that if they did launch a preemptive strike, they were going to be in the position of, facing Russia and China, not to mention just Iran, and were confident that they'd have the backing of the United States. And here's the odd thing: the United States has had all these military assets, combat aircraft. We got F-35s, 22s, the Raptors. We've got, I think, F-18s, F-16. I mean, we sent everybody,
Submarine.
and the submarines, aircraft carrier, marine, what used to be called a marine amphibious unit, a MAU is now a MU, the Marine Expeditionary Unit, to do evacuations of personnel if necessary. And for what? Because if Iran retaliates, as I believe it will, if I had to put money on it right now, they could, there's a bookie in London saying, okay, place your bets. I'd put $100 that Iran's going to hit a sensitive Israeli intelligence site where they will kill the personnel. The personnel who work there will likely be killed or wounded, but nobody else, and it'll be done with a ballistic missile. And the point is, with the ballistic missile, there's nothing that the U.S. Navy, in terms of carrier task force groups, or the U.S. Air Force with all of its fighter wings, they don't have any weapon system to counter that. They have nothing to shoot down an incoming ballistic missile, particularly if it's a hypersonic missile, for God's sake. But yeah, we put all these cats over there. Gives the Navy, they'll have something to justify next year when they ask for a budget increase. See how important we were? We go, aren't you the same guys that couldn't defeat the Houthis? Oh, yeah, I'll forget about that. We're taking on the Iranians. Yeah, but aren't the Iranians stronger than the Houthis? Yeah, but we'll figure it out. I mean, it's, this could be a Monty Python skit. It's so absurd.
Larry, if Israel decides to attack Iran from the air, what does Iran have to defend itself?
Yeah, I think they've right now got Russian S-400 air defense systems. They've got their own air defense missiles, but I think the Russians have provided them with something that's proven to work and work effectively under combat conditions, with let's call it better than a 90% rate of effectiveness. Quite the contrary to the Patriot or the Iron Dome or anything else.
Because Hezbollah just showing its weapons, its missiles, and Israel is showing these fighter jets, and we saw that the Russian media is talking about that the war between Iran and Israel is inevitable, and this shows that at the end of the day we're gonna have something between Iran and Israel. But I think these negotiations are very important if they can get something through negotiations for Gaza.
Yeah. So are you a boxing fan or a mixed martial artist fan like the Ultimate Fighting Champion? Okay. So that press conference they have like a day or two before the fight where both fighters are there? And then afterwards they stand up and they're in each other's face and they're posturing and So that's what we're going through right now. You got Iran's doing it, Hezbollah's doing it, Israel's doing it. None of them not doing it are the Houthis. They're like, fire! Fires off the missile. There it goes. Have you seen the video from Hezbollah of their underground facility? The Imad Mughniya 4, as they call it. They got this massive underground complex. Talk about a hardened, deeply buried target that Israel won't be able to touch, even with a nuke. They're each sort of flexing their muscles right now, but then comes a moment when you got to get into the ring and fight. And the fact that Israel has been incapable of delivering a military defeat to Hamas, now 10 months, going on 11 months, since the start of this war, on October 7th. How are they going to, quote, defeat Hezbollah and Iran once the attack comes? I do believe that Iran and Hezbollah are going to coordinate. Hezbollah has an enormous number of rockets that it can and missiles that it can fire into Israel. Already, they've demonstrated just the other day that the Iron Dome can stop a bunch of them. Uh, for all of Israel's tough talk about everything that they're going to do, the longer this war drags on, it favors Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iran, not Israel. Because for Israel, it's costing it enormously on the economic front, both in terms of tourists not coming in, as well as all the Palestinian workers that used to come across the border and work in Israeli businesses and help those Israelis make money. That's stopped. And then you've got businesses that were many of the owners or key personnel are reservists that have been activated and are out running around Gaza getting shot at. So this is, we're in sort of that quiet period, just like in World War II, before the actual fighting started. There was, the initial invasion of Poland, and then, 8 months passed before the Nazis launched their major offensive into Europe, into the Netherlands and France, culminating in Dunkirk. But there was that period where nothing was going on. That's sort of where we are now. But I think that it will end one of these days and end suddenly, and then we're going to be into a dangerous period where they could escalate up to and including the use of a nuclear weapon.
The other thing, Larry, that Colonel Jack Bow pointed out when I was talking with him was that the potential of these nukes. He said that they're not gonna do the same as we saw in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, because in those cities most of the structures were made of wood.
Right.
And right now we know that mostly in Iran the structure are made of concrete, reinforced concrete and steel. And that's why I think he said that we are not going to have the same kind of impact that we saw in Japan. That because when we think of nukes, everybody thinks that they're going to destroy everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't seem to be a game changer if Israel goes that way.
Yeah, well, I agree with Jacques from just a military standpoint. I think the people watch too many Hollywood movies where the nuke is like it ends the story or it's the ultimate game changer. If Israel chooses to use a nuclear weapon, it will be a game changer in the sense that it will leave Israel isolated in a way it has never been. It will unite the world against Israel in a way that has never occurred. And Israel's ultimate existence as a nation will be at risk. And it could end. Because there are other nuclear powers beyond Russia and China. Pakistan has nukes. South Africa has nukes. And who's to say they would not want to retaliate against Israel for crossing that line, to teach them, to stop them? It leads into the potential escalation. Same, Russia and China that's a line neither of those countries want to cross either. So it's the Israelis, excuse me. Again, I'm talking to people that I'm acquainted with. I won't call them friends because we really don't share a lot in common, particularly on this subject. We can't talk about it because they get all upset. But they are convinced that when Israel strikes Iran, that Iran's just going to crumble into dust and will put up no more resistance. I keep telling them, guys, that's just not what history tells us. Don't be crazy. That for example, one was saying that uh, Israel's going to hit Iran with a devastating cyber attack. I said, excuse me, Israel already did that. It was called Stuxnet. How'd that work out? Supposed to destroy Iran's nuclear industry, or at least all the processes that were underway to refine uh, the uranium. It didn't work, and then Iran, in response to that, set up its own nuclear army or cyber army to counteract the West. Did you see this the other day? Because I wrote about it on my blog. The Israeli press was here. We have launched a cyber attack on Iran that's disabled its banking system. I go, wow. I start checking out Tehran Times. Nothing. The Iranian news agency, IRNA. Nothing. Press TV. Nothing. It was like going, what's going on here? That Iranians have all gotten together and said, shh, don't say anything about that cyber attack. We don't want to give them any satisfaction. Nah, you're Iranian. You guys can't keep secrets. you can't keep that a secret. So this was clearly a psychological operation, in my view, by the Israelis to portray them as doing something they hadn't done in order to make them feel maybe they're setting the stage that, yeah, we kicked their ass so bad. That's why they're coming to the bargaining table. That's not really why they're coming to the bargaining table, but so be it. So very, very strange.
Larry, if something happens in Iran, we have a lot of people who gonna talk about it, taking picture. If something happens, bomb. And what in Israel, on attack of Iran and Israel, we haven't seen anything coming out of Israel. It seems that
Yeah.
they're mostly controlled by the government, but in Iran, that is not the case. We know from
Right.
what's going on in Iran. Every time that we have something going on in Iran, we have a lot of footage, a lot of pictures, a lot of people talking about what's going on in Iran. But in Israel, it's totally different. And at the same time, we're talking about Iran is just isolated. The government,
Yeah.
it's unbelievable.
And don't forget, they're a terrorist state. They are the worst terrorists in the world. Not really, but that's what they say.
Yeah. The other thing, Larry, right now within the Netanyahu administration, do we know what was the main reason of this misunderstanding or these differences between Netanyahu and his Ministry of Defense? What was the main reason of that, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, the main reason is the Ministry of Defense actually knows the cost it's incurring by continuing this protracted war with Hamas. I mean, this is really uh, people like to make fun of the Russians, right? Oh, you've been fighting 2.5 years, and look, you've hardly made any progress. Well, actually, they've made significant progress. They've taken back the city of Mariupol, rebuilt it, and they've recaptured, whether it's Bakhmut, Avdiivka, places we were talking about last year and the earlier part of this year, now fully under Russian control. And every day, more cities, villages, towns are falling under Russian control. In Israel, they keep moving back and forth. I mean, it's like that whack-a-mole. They pop this one and it pops over there, and pop that one, and they go pop. They keep expending men, material, ammunition, and they keep killing Palestinians, and the fighting goes on. They haven't stopped it. And the goal of a military operation is to render your opponent incapable of fighting back. And that's, again, we go back to the parallel with a boxing match. You fight until the other, hopefully you can incapacitate the other fighters so they can't get up off the canvas. They're down for the count. That's what Israel has wanted to do to Hamas, but Hamas is not going down. They keep fighting. They keep hanging in there. And the Israelis keep suffering casualties. They're not horrendous amounts, but they suffer enough, which makes a difference in that country, given its size. So it is, you've got that going on from the defense side, which is why the general, I think his name is Yuval, the head of the IDF, came out 3 weeks ago and said, look, we can't defeat Hamas. Hamas is an idea. I was going, yay, finally somebody gets it. Congratulations. Boy, immediately attacked by Netanyahu. And there are other reports in the press. Again, I haven't no position to confirm or verify. But if true, say that Netanyahu lit into the head of Mossad and the head of the IDF, accused them of being cowards and weaklings. I got a rule of thumb. If I'm not carrying a firearm with me, the last thing I want to do is accuse a guy carrying a gun of being a weakling or a coward. Just really immediately puts you at a disadvantage. But that's Netanyahu. He's a little crazy that way. So you've got this clear rift in the military and the civilian side, which I think is another contributing factor to the delay in Israel launching a preemptive strike. And that also, the Iranians may be looking at that saying, let's maybe see what we can do to keep them fighting amongst each other. If the Israelis are so busy fighting amongst each other, then Iran doesn't necessarily have to incur the risk of starting World War III. But Iran has taken every step to make sure that it's talked to the UN Security Council, warned them. It's got the backing now of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, 57 nations. And it's got the Russians. And I'm sure it's got the Chinese too. That just hasn't been reported in the news.
I think Chinese are also they're so angry about what's going on in Middle East because they have been trying to get some sort of solution to the conflict, but just this assassination of Ismail Haniyeh was the end of all the things that they have been doing.
Well, it wasn't the end necessarily, but remember when the Chinese convened the 14, 15 different Palestinian groups in Beijing on July 26, July 27, to sign that communique. That was China putting its reputation on the line that, hey, we're in here, we're going to help. You got the Palestinians all now they're now in the same rowboat rowing in the same direction, in theory. Before, they're all in different rowboats going every which way is a mess. Now they're rowing in the same direction. And remember, this goes back to the Israeli strategy of divide and conquer. One of the Israeli goals and why they funded Hamas was to create internal divisions among the Palestinians so that they would never come together and work as a unit for their own freedom and their own independence. Chinese brought them together, but now by killing Haniyeh, they've really it was be considered by the Chinese a loss of faith, and an insult. And if anything, I think it's going to reinforce the Chinese desire and commitment to trying to bring about peace in the Middle East, and maybe at the expense of Israel. The Israelis haven't bought themselves any goodwill with the Chinese. It's like the Israelis have been on a mission to see, hey, let's piss off the Chinese and the Russians, apart from all the Muslim countries as well. They're leaving themselves isolated. And they're making a huge bet that America is always going to be there to stand behind them. And if they've studied history at all, they'd know that that's a very, very risky bet, because we have a good track record of when the going gets tough, we get going. Bye-bye. Just ask the Afghans or the South Vietnamese, or, we just, go over the list of countries. We have hung in there against North Korea, I guess. That's an exception.
Larry, shifting the gear to the conflict in Ukraine, it seems that Russia has already started the offensive on Kursk region. And do we know what they're going to do in that region?
Yeah, right now they've blocked the ability of Ukrainian forces to continue to advance north towards the nuclear power plant. Number one, they have split up the Ukrainian attacking forces into different groups, so that those groups can't coordinate, can't reinforce one another, can't work in a concerted fashion. And Russia's killing them or capturing them. It's one or the other. Those that are trying to get away do, but the longer this goes on, the fewer their options will be. This is an incredible disaster for Ukraine, even though the West continues to try to present it as a bold blow against the Russians and got Putin shaking. No, it's just, they spend too much time lying to themselves that they start believing the lies.
There are, when people talking about this attack, this Ukrainian attack on Kursk region, they're talking about many reasons behind this attack. Some people are talking about maybe they're looking after some sort of improving their position to negotiate. The other talking about it was a democratic plan to make everything in favor of the Democratic Party in the United States to show they're doing something in that region. Let's continue supporting them. But how do you find it, in your opinion, if we assume that NATO and the intelligence in the United States have decided to go after this plan, what they were seeking for, in your opinion?
Well, no, I think they thought that the plan would work. It would lead to the capture of the nuclear power plant in Kursk and force the Russians into a serious negotiation. That's what it was. It was a wild bet. Keep forgetting how sensitive the Russians are to foreign invaders. The Mongols, the Cossacks, the French, the Germans, the Americans, the Brits that came in during after World War One. Russia lives. It comes out of a paranoid culture, and so this attempt by the West to think that they would weaken Russian resolve and force Russia to negotiate. Oh, please, Mr. Hitler, stop killing our soldiers. We give up. Well, that didn't happen. They rallied and defeated Hitler. And I would ask any military planner, it'd be one thing if you say, okay, we want to invade Russia and defeat the Russians militarily. All right. You're going to need about a 3 million man army. You're going to need enough aircraft that you can destroy, possibly, Russian air defense systems. You'll lose planes in the process, but maybe you can destroy some of the Russian systems. And it'd be a very bloody war, but we might ultimately beat them that way. Well, that's not this. This is 12,000 guys. And all the 12,000 guys they're cannon fodder now. And they may have been some of the best, most elite units in the Ukrainian army, and some of them very capable. Reportedly, 2,000 of them were foreign mercenaries, Poles, French, Brits, and some Americans. We'll find out if that's true. But this was not just a Ukrainian idea. This had Western planning, Western support. And the West was hoping that, if it forced the Russians to negotiate, it then could also have a political benefit for the Biden-Harris administration.
Don't you think that the main reason of this attack was to capture that nuclear power plant?
Yeah,
If
yeah,
they couldn't do that, it's already defeated.
yeah. No, it is defeated. All you got to do is look at the map. Look at they're not advancing anywhere. They claim to quote control Zelensky. They would control 74 places, but nonsense. You know, um, I drove through Tampa, Florida the other day. I control Tampa. No, I drove through it. Okay, big city. I didn't control anything except the car that I was driving. That was the extent of limits of my control.
Because if they knew that they're going to send these people into a trap there, because right now it doesn't seem that they do have any sort of option to get out of that zone, and they're going to get killed.
Well, without revealing the source, but I know, if you listen to any of Alexander Mercouris talk of late, he's got a source that's been cluing him in that part of this operation in Kursk was a trap set by the Russians. The question is, um, how far um, how far up the food chain did knowledge about the potential threat from the Ukrainians did it go? Was it not communicated to Putin? Was it kept in certain channels? But it was reacted to very, very quickly. And the general that's now been put in charge of the operation was, in fact, the first one to deploy troops there, even before there had been any official order from the defense ministry. And this is, it's working out very badly for the Ukrainians. I think at least one third of the force has been killed, which is a significant number. And God knows how many of those are wounded. I don't have any firm numbers on captives, but a number have been captured. So you're watching. This was a desperation move. This was like taking going in and stealing your son or daughter's college fund and going to the casino and betting it all, thinking that you're going to win the jackpot and you lose. Then what? You're out of money. So Ukrainians are running out of money.
The rumors that says Sersky has been killed by Russians, I don't know if that's right or not, but they're just it's just in the news talking about this. And it doesn't seem that Zelensky is in a better position if he, at the end of the day, it seems that Ukraine is going to kill him, Larry. The way that he's just conducting his duty right now,
Yeah.
it's just totally against even those people who were fighting for more than 2 years. They're not just considering him as a friend, not a leader.
If uh, if I was Zelensky, I'd be listening to John Denver singing, all my bags are packed, I'm ready to go. Standing here outside, I'm leaving on a jet plane because I think if you will, the field of battle is being prepared for the jettisoning of Mr. Zelensky, getting rid of him. That story that appeared the other day in the Wall Street Journal that you've talked about it on your show about the new who really did Nord Stream. I from that I think I was the first, I think, and then Alex Cristoforo picked it up, but we may have independently done it. But we've both referred to it as the Gilligan Island version. That the skipper went out all these for a 3-hour tour, and then they got lost on a desert island. So that story put out there. Oh, the Ukrainians did it, and Zelensky approved it, but then he withdrew his approval. But General Zelensky went ahead and did it, and Zelensky's currently ambassador to Britain. And you're going, Zelensky did it? An army guy? And the team they had were not really what you'd call technical divers with experience doing explosive demolition. Well, that story comes out now. You got to say why. But it doesn't cast Zelensky in a good light. And this comes against other reports. one coming out of Russia that the West has already designated a successor for Zelensky, and they're looking for ways to get rid of him because they recognize Zelensky's usefulness. He's no longer he's just an idiot. He's no longer a useful idiot, and so it's time to dump the idiot. So, um, and then as the things turn from bad to worse for Ukraine and the Donbass with Donetsk being liberated, I think you're going to see the complete liberation of Donetsk Republic by end of September at the latest. The Ukrainians will have lost the ability to retain any territory there, which would be a significant loss. And then that's really going to put the heat on in Zaporizhia. And so I think, the Russians are well on their way to consolidating victory. And the West is just trying to figure out, God, can we stop this? It's not, how do we stop it? They're even wondering, is there a way to stop it? And I don't think there is.
I think if Russia was hesitant to just neutralize all these Ukrainians and go after some sort of negotiation right now with this attack on Kursk region, they're going to find it that they have to put an end to this conflict the way they wanted to do. Because if they let Ukrainians being just attacking on Russian soil, it's going to last forever.
Yeah. Well, it's not going to last forever because Ukraine is bleeding men. And just like with a human body, there's only so much blood. You can only bleed up to a point where and then you die. And Ukraine's the same. Same with its economy. Same with its weapon systems. They don't have, it's not like they're hooked up to a fountain of eternal youth and that they'll have all the weapons, all the men, all the money they're ever going to need. It's never going to dry up. No, that's not at all the case, just the opposite. So they're bleeding out. The question is, can the Russians take any steps to accelerate that process and make them bleed faster? That I don't know.
Yeah. Larry, let me show you a picture here from Financial Times. There is an article in Financial Times, and these red dots on the map shows that these are possible targets. If something happens between NATO and Russia, Russia would attack these red targets that you see on the map. It's amazing that it says it comes from secret files from 2008 to 2014. It's so amazing to see that there is nothing on Poland. When we talk about Poland, no, Iran, China, North Korea, they're gonna attack Iran, China, and North Korea if something happens between Russia and NATO. And do they really believe that? It's just it's
Yeah.
unbelievable why Russia would do that to Iran.
Well, Russia would not do that. This is U.S. analysts imagining what they think Russia might do, but it's divorced from reality. Yeah, you see, they're going to launch attacks in Romania, in Turkey. And like I said, nothing in Poland, only in Germany, nothing in France, nothing in England. Oh, yeah, there is one in France, but nothing in Spain. I do see how England's there, but China, what China and Russia are in bed together now, folks.
Even you can't argue about Iran and North Korea as well.
Yeah, it's just it's ridiculous. But it underscores that just because it's called the intelligence community doesn't necessarily mean that it's smart. Okay,
Larry, right now there is a getting back to there is a people are talking about CIA gave the head of Qatari intelligence top award. In your opinion, if I don't know if that's right or not, but
Well, I
Is
guess
that possible?
so that Bill Burns gave a counterintelligence award to who?
Yeah,
Who got the
CIA gave
award?
the head of Qatari intelligence top award. I don't know why they didn't mention that. And do you think that could happen?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
The question is that possible that CIA would give the head of Qatari intelligence top award?
But
It's
the head of whose counterintelligence? U.S.,
Qatari,
Ukraine?
Qatari,
Oh, Qatari?
yeah,
You mean
Qatari,
Qatar?
yeah, Qatar.
I guess anything's possible. I mean, the U.S. has been relying on Qatar uh, for the Al Udeid Air Force Base is it's a big center for the movement of U.S. forces in and out of Iraq and then to other locations in the Middle East. So, and it's also the site for one of the joint uh, air operations commands. That all the operations being run in Syria run out of that. So, yeah, they could have given that award, but uh, it was. And Qatar has also played a critical role in the peace negotiations, at least hosting the negotiations, playing a go-between with Hamas and Israel. So anything's possible with these guys, sure.
But it's that, because this is ridiculous to give the head of intelligence that.
Well,
Because it's
it's like if you do it, why announce it?
exactly.
Okay, that's the other. If because that in announcing it, you almost in a way sort of compromise the head of Qatari intelligence because he's then seen as just a complete tool of the West. And
Larry, do
maybe
you
he is.
think? Yeah, go ahead.
No, I said just maybe he is, but that's um, doesn't necessarily help him.
Well, and do we know if the Biden administration is trying to negotiate, to talk with Russians right now with the situation in the Kursk region?
I don't think so, not at all. There may be some contacts through the CIA and maybe through military channels, but nothing formal or official. The Russians have made it pretty clear they view this as a NATO inspired, NATO planned, NATO led operation, and they're going to act accordingly. They're going to destroy it, they'll gather the evidence, and they'll make the presentation to support it. This is, this is a sign of desperation on the part not just of Ukraine, but of NATO and the United States as a whole.
Because if you're honest in what you're talking about, and they're saying that they were not part of this operation, they were not participating, helping Ukrainians, if that's the case, you have to prove that to Russians. Without
Yeah,
giving solid
it's,
evidence to them, you cannot prove anything.
yeah, but it's you know it no longer we live in a world where it no longer matters what you can objectively prove as fact. We live in a world of lies and narratives. And once the dominant narrative is set, it doesn't matter what the facts are. The war in Ukraine is a typical example of that. The fact of the matter is, this war ultimately was provoked by the West, and the West refuses to accept any responsibility for it. And any attempt to explain that and to point that out to people falls on deaf ears. So, again, I wish we lived in the world that you believe in, where facts matter. We'd much better off if we followed Nema's rules for life.
Thank you so much, Larry, for being with us today. Great pleasure as always.
Hey, thank you, my friend. Always good to be with you. It's like a weekly adventure.
Yeah. See you soon.
Okay. All right.